Good morning, everybody. We're going to go ahead and get started. I know we've got some individuals still joining us. 8:09 is a little early in the morning. So, first of all, welcome. Thank you all for joining us this morning for our first VNPC Day of Learning. But those of you would previously know this as when we would hold our perinatal, maternal, and infant mortality summit, which is a mouthful. So, we're going to change things around a little bit this year. I'll cover that here as soon as we get started with the slides. But we got a few introductions that I want to do first. I'm not used to clicking up here, you guys. This is all new technology for me. So really quick, I want to go ahead and I am not just up here by myself. I have an amazing team working behind the scenes that have kept me on my toes. For those of you that are newer to the VNPC, you knew that we started as a 100% volunteer organization in 2017, and it wasn't until 2020 that I moved over as a full-time position. And since that time, we've now added 2 more staff, and we have 1 position currently in recruitment. So I want to introduce Sabrina Monroe, who, by the way, ran a full marathon yesterday and completed it. So the fact that she's here is amazing. So Sabrina is our program specialist, and if you look on the table at those stickers, those were all designed by her, and if it has anything to do with logistics or communication or social media, that is all owed to Sabrina. So she will be floating around if you guys have any questions or stop her and introduce yourselves. One little thing, she is leaving May 20th to go on a full scholarship to pursue her master's at UVA, so I'm very excited about that. But she will be staying on with us as a contractor, so she's not going very far. And then secondly, I want to introduce Brittany Watson, who started in January, and Brittany is our program manager. And for all of you working with quality improvement with the hospitals, Brittany is going to now be your one-on-one. So I will always be here, but Brittany is really, her sole responsibility is to work with you all to make sure you have everything you need, from technical assistance to anything. She is your go-to. So please utilize her. She has hit the ground running and is phenomenal. So she will also be running around, so definitely introduce yourself to her. Next, I want to introduce, we have the privilege of having 3 Bonner students through University of Richmond. And I have Ariana Sosa, who is graduating in next year. Okay, she's my junior. And so she's going to be floating around, but we're very excited to have her. And then I have Tumba, and I'm not going to try to say her last name. And I still don't say her name right. She's still working with me on that. Tumba is our first year Bonner, so we have her for another 3 years. So she will be with us, for a little bit. So anyways, that's our team. And I'm Shannon. I think you guys have all seen this, but I'm the director for the Virginia Neonatal Perinatal Collaborative. All right, so the purpose for today, I really we designed today as really the best fits for your needs and your path. So what is today? Usually a lot of our summits, we have prescriptive, you have to do this, you have to do that. What we really wanted with our breakouts today is for you to design your own agenda. I feel like it's one of those book things, you get to pick your own ending. So that's what we're here for today. Also to network and learn from all of your peers. We're all peers in here. We're all working. We have one shared goal. Right now, we all in this room want to improve maternal and infant health outcomes. So let's learn from each other. There's so much expertise, experience, and value that's in this room. Reach out. Get out of your comfort zone and reach out and talk to each other, because I guarantee you we'll learn something from each other. I want to also challenge you as we go through today to look at maternal and infant health in a new way. That's what today is. We're reframing the why. Why? Because what we've been doing for so long, as I'll show later with statistics, it's not working. So I want everybody to get out of your comfort zone, and we're going to reframe that why. Why are we all here today? So and I also want you to be present and open-minded to the presentations today. So real quick, housekeeping. In your folder, you all have seen your agenda. Should be either on that yellow or green page. Ran out of green paper, so some of you have yellow. So there's your agenda for the day. The VNPC Day of Learning Bingo, that is another fun way. We started that in the fall, and it was very well received. So there was confusion on our end. We didn't communicate correctly in the fall. So for that one, when you are done with that bingo card, you don't have to turn it in, but go see Jackie at the front desk, and she will give you another opportunity to win. If you guys were at the reception last night, you know there was some pretty good swag. You guys can see the swag out on the table out there. And you'll get a ticket once you complete that. The other thing is you'll see the little QR code. That is the link tree. So that has all the bios of the speakers. That has all of the information that's referenced throughout the conference today. We're trying to move to paperless. So everything is there on that QR code under the link tree. And then the blue one, the most important one, is we only are as good as the information you give back to us. So we do read all those evaluations, and that's how we improve upon for each summit moving forward. So please take a chance and fill out that evaluation at the end of the day. Once you fill out that evaluation, see Jackie as well for another ticket. So everybody ultimately should have 3 chances to win. You should have gotten one when you came in. If you didn't, check with Jackie. She'll get it for you. You should get, 4. I'm skipping ahead. Hold that thought. There's another. There'll be actually 4. Hold that last one for a second. Professional headshots. We've done something new. We saw this as an opportunity. We all have social media accounts in some way or another, or we're doing presentations, and it's becoming a standard to submit headshots. If you're anything like me, I needed a new one. So we have a professional photographer coming from 10 to 2 today. They will be located in the Shenandoah room. All slots, which were 50, have already been, so if you signed up for a slot prior to today, then please make sure you're there 5 minutes early. I believe you got a text with your time. A reminder with your time. Please be there 5 minutes before your appointment time, because we are literally putting one person through every 5 minutes from 10 to 2. So it will have to be a well-oiled machine. We will get it. Everybody that has signed up will get one. If you did not sign up, we've already contracted her to join us for the 7th annual summit in October. So a little plug there. Make sure you sign up for the summit in October and sign up for your free headshot. All right, so I want to actually introduce, we've done something new with this summit. We are actually going to partner moving forward with local organizations. And so I want to introduce Brittany with Sylvia's Sisters to let her tell you a little bit about Sylvia's Sisters. And then the opportunity, this is where the other raffle comes in.
Thanks for having me. I'm Brittany Averett. I'm the Executive Director of Sylvia's Sisters. We work to end period poverty in Central Virginia, and we also have a Ugandan mission. Period poverty, as I'm sure most of you are aware, is the inability to access or afford period products, and it has myriad consequences. Girls miss school. A study by Kotak showed that 1 in 4 girls will miss school this year because they can't afford appropriate menstrual products. And the same study showed that 1 in 3 low-income women, of which 40% of Virginia menstruators are considered low income, will miss appointments or work or school this year. It has physical health outcomes. I'm sure this room is particularly aware of those, such as infection and infertility due to using products inappropriately or using things that aren't meant for the purpose. We've heard of people using stuffed animal stuffing and mattress stuffing and bread and socks because they don't have access to these products. A George Mason study showed that it also has severe mental health consequences. Many people who are experiencing period poverty also experience severe depression, symptoms consistent with depression. So that is my elevator speech about period poverty. The important thing for you to know is that I'm set up at a table out in the hallway where you walked in, and we are accepting product donations and cash donations. We are an all-volunteer organization, And the most important thing that we need help with right now is professional services. So if we are initiating our educational mission post-COVID. So we like to go into schools. We like to go. The way that we operate, I should say, is that we provide period products to nonprofit organizations and schools in the area. So we take the product donations that you will give us, and we make these kits that include enough supplies for one menstruator for 1 month. So it's pads, tampons, and liners in here. And we give them to various organizations that work with menstruators in need, such as women's shelters, homeless shelters, groups that work with the formerly incarcerated, groups that work with veterans. We also give them at least half of our kids go to schools in Richmond, Henrico, Chesterfield, Petersburg, anywhere in Central Virginia. So we are trying to, a large part of why period poverty exists is because of the stigma surrounding menstruation. And so many of these young women don't have adequate access to health care. So an important part of our mission is also education. So we like to go into schools, we go to these organizations, we teach them about proper menstrual hygiene, and we give them resources who they can contact in case they have questions or need help. So if you have an organization that would benefit from having a supply of products for menstruators to need, let me know. If you're able to volunteer for Sylvia Sisters, we have a spot for you, whether it's offering your professional services as a medical expert or you just want to get involved, packing kits, something low-key, we can use all the help. So find me out there, and you get a raffle ticket for donating to us today, so that's another incentive. Anyway, thank you so much for letting me speak.
Absolutely. Thank you all. All right, so a little bit more housekeeping. So to engage with us today, we've got our own handle. Sabrina will be looking at that throughout the day, making sure it gets posted. There is our Instagram and Facebook page. And then if you're private, we realized this a couple of times last night. If you are private, then you will actually need to share your photos with Sabrina, and she will go and so just if DM the Virginia neonatal perinatal on there, and then she'll make sure your picture gets on social. So, all right, so let's have a little bit of fun. Let's see who is in this room, because I think this will kind of level set and talk with us about the day. So for those of you not familiar with Mentimeter, go ahead and scan the QR code, or you can go to that website. Give everybody a second, and I believe there's maybe, 7 or 8 questions on the polls. And then that will be the code, but if you do that QR code, it will bring you up to the polls. Give everybody a few more seconds. And then once you're there, there should be a series of questions. Go ahead and enter those, and then we will show the results. We'll take about 3 to 5 minutes to let everybody do this. I promise there's value added to this. So the first one is, who do we have here in the room today? Why is this important? We need to know who we're sitting amongst, who we want to network with, and who our peers and our camaraderies are across the state. And we're going to save all these, so they'll be on social too if you guys are still trying to enter questions as we're going through these. You want to go to the next slide? For the poll. Looks like we have a lot of hospitals. Okay. If you listed a hospital, who are you representing? UVA coming in big and strong early on. VCU. So I'm going to put this out in the universe so that hopefully by October, I would love to have all 51 of our birth hospitals represented at our summit in October. Blythe County. Exciting. All right, can we go to the next one? All right, so if you listed a health district or community for your organization, who do you represent? So for those of you that don't know, we have 35 health districts. But we have roughly 120-ish health departments. I'm not seeing anybody in the north. It could be that the speaker's in my way. Do you see any northern? All right, so that's an opportunity. Okay. So full transparency, if you've already looked at the agenda, there's going to be breakouts based on location. So Inova, if there's only a few of you in that room for the northern breakout, you can merge with another one, but we'll get to that one when we see it. That's okay. That's opportunity. That means we need to reach out to Inova in Northern Virginia a little bit more. That's okay. All right, next one. All right, so I always like to ask this question. So if you've previously been to a VNPC summit, oh, I'm liking this. The no's are winning. Welcome. Hopefully this won't be your last. All right, next slide. All right, if you're currently engaged in a QI project through the VNPC, yes or no? Brittany, this one's for you. And as I talk, you guys will see me on the agenda for data. We're going to jump more into this. And our Project Embrace is actually both hospital and community focused. So you do not have to be a part of a hospital to be engaged in our quality improvements. All right, there's lots of opportunity in this room. Okay, next question. How many years, I always like asking this one too, how many years of experience do you have in maternal infant health? Again, I see this as opportunity. I'll talk about this a little bit later. All right, next slide. All right, and just for fun, what's your guys' favorite? I need some new shows on Netflix or Hulu. And I'm sure we can all benefit from that. Isn't that like one of the main questions? Which ones are good? Oh, Yellowstone. There's some good ones. I think we need to definitely save this slide and put it on our social for just check back. Keep everybody put it in, and then we'll actually put this on social media so you guys can get some good shows to reference. Ooh, Married at First Sight. That's a guilty pleasure of mine too. Why I'm working to have it in the background. All right. Just a little bit of fun. So thank you everybody for participating in that. So real quick, so introduction. Why are we here today? I promise I didn't plan this, but you would think that I did. We've had these dates set. But if anybody has been watching the news recently or have been on social media, I think you've seen at least one of these. The rate of women dying in childbirth surged to 40%. These deaths are preventable. I'm going to let this slide just sit here for a second. This is why we're here today. We're reframing that why. We clearly have work left to be done. And what we have been doing is not moving that needle. In fact, it is, but the wrong way. This is maternal mortality data for Virginia. This is very sobering. The reason it's preliminary is because it has not been reviewed by the team yet, and it's still in that surveillance data. But 2020, 82, which was high. 2021, 108. In less than 5 years, it has more than doubled. So the time that the VNPC has been around, maternal mortality has doubled. Infant mortality, it's not any better. We don't have data for 2021 yet. But I also want to draw your attention. So we have the total written first. We have white, black, and other. I didn't put rates up here, but the white is about 3 to 4 for the infant mortality rate. Black is at over 10 for the infant mortality rate. That is not acceptable at all. And this is the data. There's nothing suppressed. There's nothing added. This is straight, basic surveillance statistics. And our other is rising as well. I'm going to let you guys think about that. We're going to jump back into the data. Dr. Henderson is going to talk about reframing the why. But I wanted to leave you guys with that and start why we're all here today. We all have work to do. Every one of us can directly impact those numbers in one way or the other. All right, we're going to move to a little bit more lighter note, and then we'll go back. So real quick, the VNPC has been funded recently. In the fall, we were funded for both the CDC PQC grant and CDC Maria grant. In that one, we're a sub-awardee in partnership with the Maternal Mortality Review Team. So myself and Dr. Arthur Olendoff, who's the chair for the VNPC, sit on the Maternal Mortality Review Team. And Melanie's over here. She is the project manager for the Maternal Mortality Review Team. The purpose that a lot of people don't fully understand is that, in talking with legislators, is that the VNPC is really the implementation arm to the Maternal Mortality Review Team. So the Maternal Mortality Review Team is the data aspect. We are the ones that should be implementing and driving these recommendations into implementation. So how do we do that? We do some of that with our monthly webinars. As I mentioned earlier, we've hired 3 people now with a position actively in recruitment. That will be for a VNPC communication manager, as a lot of our recommendations from the Maternal Mortality Review Team, along with our grants, work on awareness campaigns and really getting this information out to the community. Education, awareness, prevention. I'm not skipping how I'm mentioning it. Turn the page project. I'm going to highlight this, and then we're going to actually have a presentation later today. Turn the page. We see that data. That data stops us. But what's going to stop us more is when we actually have a digital storytelling. To actually walk for about 3 to 5 minutes in someone else's shoes and experience what they went through, which has something to do with these numbers. So we will have 5 presentations for that after lunch. There's a few Kleenexes on the table. If you are sensitive, you're going to want to make sure that you have some Kleenexes prior to that. Just going to forewarn that. We've also done a strategic plan with the VNPC, and we're actually in the process of restructuring. More to follow with that. We have workforce development. As I mentioned, we have 3 Bonner students, and we have 1 capstone project with a GMU, George Mason University master's student. We do have an active opening for our neonatal chair recruitment. Joe has been phenomenal, but it is time. He says it's time to move on. He's been at this for almost 6 years. So I'm putting a little plug out there if you all are interested in filling Joe's shoes. It's hard shoes, big shoes to fill. And so he will actually stop and talk with him about the commitment. And then I want to throw it out there, save the date for our 7th annual summit. It is already locked in, Great Wolf Lodge in Williamsburg. We will come back to this. All right, so our strategic plan. We have been doing this over the last year. I mentioned it in October briefly, but I want to bring it back up because it is ready for publish. It is out there. We have a 1-pager. I believe it is on that Linktree link. We did not. We went with a third-party contractor who interviewed over 100 people, like one-on-one interviews, and then we also did surveys. These are the 4 top priorities that the community of Virginia has selected, and this is going to be our driving force moving forward. Health equity, number 1. Ensuring that all pregnant and parenting people and families receive quality care reflective of their needs and desire before, during, and after pregnancy. Number 2, communities. Strengthening relationships and build trust to engage diverse communities that reflect pregnant and parenting populations in the work of the collaboration. For those of you for the breakout session, Maternal Quality Care Alliance, that is actually our community engagement arm of the VNPC. We are not together anymore. We are, but we're not. We're separate. We have realized they're going through their own strategic plan process right now. They have realized that in order to make the change that they need to have the autonomy to do it themselves through the Maternal Quality Care Alliance. So that is community-led and community-driven. We are braided and we work very, very closely together, but we wanted them to be able to have that autonomy so that when we invite them to the table, it's not the tokenism. They're actually being seen and valued and has the same leverage as everybody on the VNPC. So we will have members from the Maternal Quality Care Alliance will be on our board of directors, and our board of directors will be on their board of directors. So we are going to really do with this whole interwoven ability. This is a different concept than what some other states have done. We've tried it. For those of you that have been around, we've tried to create a community engagement committee over 4 times with 4 different leaders, and it has failed every single time. So this one has really gotten traction and gotten off the ground. But Stephanie Spencer, who I'm not seeing in the room right now, but she will actually be doing a breakout on Maternal Quality Care Alliance. So I highly recommend going to that because we need them at the table and they need us. It's that collaboration. Strategic plan number 3 is our data, increase access, understanding, and utilization of perinatal and infant health care data. And then number 4 is communication, a shared vision of success that mobilizes our community to action and change. So jumping ahead, we're in the process. Some of you guys know we had previously a steering committee, executive committee, and some work groups that didn't really work. So we're now completely restructuring. Hopefully by the end of June, we will have a board of directors in place. We will now have VNPC membership. We will have a VNPC advisory committee. Names are not solidified, so if the names change, I apologize. That's why it's an asterisk. In theory, what we see the advisory committee doing is being the ones that we go to when we need input and thoughts about next projects, or should we do this, or should we do that. That is going to be that entity that does that. We will have work groups for every single one of those priorities with co-chairs. And then there will be one staff attached to each of those that will be responsible for helping with meetings and agendas and just the logistics as it relates to that. And then workforce development. I've already had a couple of people reach out to me. Workforce development, what is that? That is going to be open for all students, whether it be med students, residents, interns, nursing students, public health, fill in the blank. We are constantly getting asked for volunteers. We have that opportunity. So we are going to grow them from the ground up. And part of learning is being engaged with a collaborative so that they have the experience and leadership to go out and do this, or to how do you implement QI? We can start with this workforce development. So more to follow as that one comes on, but we are super excited about that to really increase our student engagement. Again, from all levels. And I think Brittany put out a couple of examples that we could have that definitely falls in line with students. So more to follow with that. Our QI projects at the hospitals will work under Brittany, but that will fall under our data aspect for our QI projects. Social media, you can be active on our social media and be involved with the VNPC. And then, as I mentioned, the Maternal Quality Care Alliance. So if you go to the link tree that's in there, there's an opportunity to sign up if anybody's interested in getting more involved. There is no commitment right now because we don't have our structure formalized, but now is the opportunity to throw your name in the hat. And that's what we're going to go to as we start to develop these groups. All right, really quick, and I'm going to get more in depth with this during the data, but I want to mention our 4 different projects: Project Embrace, Eliminating Bias in the Diet Care. These are all of our quality improvement projects at the hospital level, and then our Project Locate. All right, any questions? There's a lot of information. All right. Well, I'm going to go ahead and turn it over to Dr. Henderson at CDC. She's a phenomenal speaker. I do not have your bio up here, and I apologize. But I'm honored to bring her up to the podium as we all learn about our real purpose of being here is reframing the why.
Good morning, everyone. So first, I'm just going to give a disclaimer. I'm not from the CDC anymore. I used to, no, that's okay. I used to lead the program to support state perinatal quality collaboratives at CDC, and I'm taking full credit for starting that program. I'm excited about the growth of this work since this work started, since the support for PQC started over 10 years ago. Actually, and I think it was about 12, 13 years when we first started that support. Since that time, I have transitioned from CDC and am working in other areas to still continue to support this work. And I'm so excited to join you today to talk about reframing the why. So in thinking about reframing something, you can think about it in a sense of changing how you look at something or thinking about reevaluating or re-examining something. And when thinking about preparing this talk, I was like, how does this really apply to our work? Not just the PQC work, but everything that we do. It's so important to understand why we do what we do. I looked at some of the questions that showed up in describing this meeting. Those questions include, why do we do the things we do? Have you ever questioned the way things are done? What is the last time you spoke up to make change for the better? And what are our goals as individuals, as collaboratives or networks working in the fields of maternal and infant health? And I think these are some important questions, but they don't just apply to this work. So today I'm going to talk to you about reframing the why. So I love starting talks with quotes. Some of the quotations that I find are just profound things that make you think and help to guide the conversation that we'll have today. And I love this quote by Mark Twain that says, "The 2 most important days in your life are the day you were born and the day you find out why." The first one happens very naturally. The second one is something sometimes you have to work to find out why and what is your purpose. How many of you are familiar with the famous TED Talk by Simon Sinek named Starting with Why? Start with Why. Great, there's some people who've never heard of it. Wonderful. So I get to tell you about it. So Simon Sinek is an inspirational presenter, writer. He does trainings, and he presented one of the most popular TED Talks since TED Talks began in around 2006. And this talk was called Start with Why. And Start with Why basically focuses on how great leaders inspire action. He goes on to talk about how leaders of corporations or companies often start with the what, the product they're going to give, share, sell, and then talk about how they're going to produce that. How do they separate themselves within the market? And then why sort of just dangles out there. Why are we doing this? But really, when you think about it, when you look at different corporations, organizations, the reason why people follow, support, is not necessarily because of that what, or even because of the how, but it's that why, the purpose behind what they're doing, the reason, the beliefs that the leadership has. When you have a leader that has a clear direction, clarity on where we're going, what they truly believe in, people who believe in the same values and the same purpose tend to follow this leader. So your why is your purpose. It's your reason for getting up in the morning. It's what motivates you to action. It's the driving force that keeps you going when times get hard and keeps you diligent when things are going well. It's the one thing that keeps you focused each and every day, and it's the one thing that no one can take away from you. Everyone has a different why, and you may have common threads from your why. You may have, commonalities with others and similarities with the why. But really, it's important to be able to articulate what your purpose is, why you do the things you do, and so that you can feel more purpose in your work and every step that you take, and you're more likely to be the leader that you were destined to be and to improve the world as a whole. I hope you all recognize that all of you in this room are leaders. You're representing your organization, your hospital, you're representing this important work to improve outcome and care for moms and babies. So in the book, Starting with Why, Simon Sinek talks about this golden circle. So as I mentioned, we naturally usually communicate from the outside end of this circle. We start with the what and then work your way to why you're doing what you do. We tell people what we do, we tell them how we're different, how we do it, and then we expect the support or following or people to join us in what we do. But the problem is that the what and the how, they do not inspire action. Facts and figures, they make rational sense, but we can't make decisions purely based on the what, on those facts and figures. Starting with why is what great leaders do. Leaders inspire by starting with the why, which is your purpose. So I'm just going to show you a quick clip about how great leaders start with why.
All the great leaders, everybody from Martin Luther King to Steve Jobs, every single one of them, those with the capacity to inspire, they will think, act, and communicate the exact same way, and it's the complete opposite to the rest of us. Where the rest of us start with what we do, these great leaders, those with the capacity to inspire and lead great change, all of them always start with why they do what they do. Great leaders are able to paint a picture of a future state that does not yet exist, a world that does not yet exist, in words so clear that we can imagine it ourselves. And if we're driven by that cause, we want to commit ourselves to help build that world. We can imagine that, we can see it, we can paint that picture in our own minds. And if that's the world we want to live in, we will raise our hands and volunteer and commit to help to build it. It doesn't have to be a social movement, but great leaders, even in business, act like social movements. They give us something to believe in, they give us a future state that does not yet exist, and offer us the opportunity to contribute our hard work, our blood, sweat, and tears to help build that world. They serve as a compass. That's what they do. Every single organization on the planet, even our own careers, always function on three levels: what we do, how we do it, and why we do it. What we do are the products we make, the services we offer, the things we sell. How we do it are those, whether you call it your unique selling proposition or your proprietary process or whatever you want to call it. It's the things that you think make you different or special or stand out from the crowd. But it's this concept of why we do what we do, this purpose, cause, or belief that drives every one of us, why the company exists in the first place. We don't need another one of whatever you're selling. There's plenty, but why do we need you? And it's not because of how you do it differently or what you do. There's something deeper there. It was the very reason why the company was formed. When organizations start with why, the response they will get from people who believe what they believe will be visceral. It will be deeply personal and in the emotional part of the brain. It will be hard for people to explain why they are so drawn to Southwest Airlines or Harley Davidson or Apple. They'll talk about, it's the design, it's the quality, it's the service. But in the reality, it's deeper than that. It's in the part of the brain that controls behavior, but not language. The best they can sum up is, I don't know, I just love it. But the reality is, it actually is one of the things that helps them define who they are. Apple is able to inspire loyalty amongst customers and employees, and shareholders for that matter, because the way they view themselves is different than the way most other computer companies view themselves. Most other computer companies define themselves by what they do. They make computers, and everything they try to do is in an effort to improve upon that thing. Add more RAM, add more speed, make it blue, Apple defines themselves by why they exist, to challenge the status quo. Power to the individual, think different. and everything they say and everything they do is to advance that idea. There was mass spontaneous mourning when Steve Jobs died. He's just a CEO of a company. He's a multi-billionaire who flies around in corporate jets. I mean, he's more like the rest of them than he is like us. And yet, we mourned his loss. Fundamentally, what a leader is supposed to do is offer a vision to the people who choose to join and offer them protection. And when people feel that their leaders have their interest in mind, they are rewarded with loyalty, love, innovation, ideas, progress. That's the thing I'm grappling with now, which is how do we create that movement so that management and leaders will create environments in which we come to work, we feel safe, we feel loved, we feel protected, we naturally cooperate as a result, we naturally trust each other as a result, we're committed to working harder, giving loyalty, sharing ideas, driving innovation. All we want to do is contribute. And so how do we create those environments in which we naturally work at our best? That would change our world.
In the words of Simon Sinek. So I'm going to give you an example from my own personal experience. As mentioned, your why is really your purpose. Your why gives you clarity, but it also gives you discipline and consistency. And so my example of a why and how it helps you really reach the goals that you want to reach is my whole journey with fitness. I saw an ad online about a boot camp and saw some of the amazing results they could achieve. They had pictures of women who started, it was a boot camp for women, by the way, had pictures of women who had lost so much weight. They would have the before picture and then the after picture where they were like half the size. I was like, oh my goodness. And they would list the time that it took them. I said, I want to do that. I want to lose weight. I want to look like that. Let me join this boot camp. So my initial reasons for joining the boot camp is because I wanted to look like the after pictures of the women I saw online. I wanted to lose weight. And so that was the what. That was the end point I wanted to reach. So I go to the boot camp. Mind you, the lead trainer of the boot camp, her name is G.I. Joe. So I knew when I walked into this place what I was getting into. And I saw the others in the class. I mean, there were some women that were just like fully ripped and toned. And then there was me. And so I tried my best. I would work out, and I realized this thing was hard, like really hard. I mean, to the point where at some points I would take bathroom breaks and hide in the bathroom. It was that hard. So it wasn't enough that I just wanted to lose weight to go to this camp. That wasn't the thing that would get me up in the morning and that would get me to deal with the pain and the sweat and the tears that I went through in this boot camp. So I really had to examine why I was there. And there was a sweat, they had shirts and different paraphernalia and merch that they sold at the gym. And one of the things they sold was this sweatshirt that says, remember your why. I love this sweatshirt because every time I saw myself in it, I was reminded, why am I doing that? Why am I killing myself? Is it really to look like the people that I saw in that advertisement? Is that my why? So I really took some time to think. And when I thought about it, it's like, do I just want to look better? Is that my why? And when I actually thought about it, I realized that my why is because I wanted to be healthier. I didn't want to go through the same things that my mother and others in terms of their health problems went through and dealing with their weight and the struggles. And the commitment to being healthier and that being my why, that was the thing that got me up in the morning. I want to live. I want to survive. I want to thrive. And that helped me deal with all of the hardness and all of the difficulty, even though I still hid in the bathroom sometimes, of going to work out. And that's just a simple example. Our purpose and our why for life and what our purpose and why we are here, why we're born is even deeper than that. But I just wanted to share that one example to distinguish between the why, which your true purpose is, and the what and the how. So I just want to hear from you. We're going to do another Mentimeter if you can scan this code. And I want to know, what is your motivation? Why are you here today? Why are you participating with VNPC? Okay, you can go back to the slides. So we're going to share this at the end and show what the primary motivation. Oh, here it is. It's showing up now. Okay. Little delay. So it's important to know why you're here, to keep you here, to help you to actually be successful in reaching the goals of what you're hoping to achieve. So we're going to do a little exercise this morning. We're going to take some time to discuss and begin the process of identifying and finding our why. And this is not just your why for why you're working your current job or why you are here at this meeting or why you're participating in VNPC. This is your why that motivates everything that you do. Discovering your why, as Simon Sinek says in his book, Find Your Why, is like panning for gold in a river of your past, retrieving nugget by nugget as different valuable pieces to help you determine why you're walking this path through life. As you search through the river of your past, the goal is to fill the following statement here. My why is to blank so that blank. And that first blank is how you want to help people or your contribution to the world. And the second blank is the impact that you want your contribution to have. So here are some examples from the co-author of the book, Finding Your Why. For example, to propel people forward so that they can make their mark on the world. Or as Simon Sinek says is his why, to inspire people to do what inspires them so that together we can change the world for the better. There are different exercises that you can do to come to the point of your why. And what I'm going to ask for you to do, if you find a partner, if there is more than just pairs, if there are less than pairs at your table, if you can find one other individual here at the meeting today, I'm asking you to select and find a partner now. And I want you to start thinking about the experiences, the people that have been most influential in your life, had the most impact on you. And then you're going to share that story with your partner. Your partner will then ask you questions to try to understand what was it about that experience or that person that is so impactful to your life, and help to identify key themes that help to draw out what your why is. So we're going to start by, if you can pair off into pairs, and start thinking about your story. Or if it's just three at your table, you can work three. I just want to give you enough time to do this. It's better with pairs.
So, is that your question? Is that your intended? Did you want to go through the questions? Or?
The second one, you'll spend more time on. That first one, I'll just
Gotcha.
share the
So just
word
cue
file.
me in when you want to go back. Absolutely. I just want to make sure we're on the same page.
No, it's fine.
Fantastic.
Thank you. So for those who may not remember, I put the instructions of what you're doing on the board. We're going to give you about 15 minutes to do this. Okay, in the last couple minutes, we're going to bring up that Mentimeter slide. Give you some more time. You can go back to Mentimeter to the next question and give you an opportunity to enter your why statement. So what is your contribution and how do you want to impact the world? And this is just a draft. We continually refine our why statement. We don't keep changing it because your why does not change. How you approach the world, how you do your work, all feeds back or feeds from that why. I'll give an example. My why is to connect people so that we can solve some of the toughest problems together. I approach everything that way. And that's one of the reasons why I love this PQC work, because it's all about collaboration, bringing together all of our gifts, talents, abilities, lived experience, and knowledge to help solve problems together. And that's something that I've been doing in every work that I do, and even outside of the work that I do in helping my children get along and dealing with conflict within my family. I approach it from that point of the why. So I'm going to ask you to take some time to enter your why statement. So while you're entering your why, there are ways that you can refine your why statement. So you can do the same exercise, but just do it with someone else. and sort of think about those experiences, those people who have most impacted your life. Share those stories. What is it about those experiences, those people that were so life-changing and so impactful? And have the other person that's you're talking with ask you questions about that to bring out what are those things that make you come alive? What are the things that you're so excited and passionate about? What are those things that are uniquely you that drives everything you do? And then there's another exercise you can do called the friend exercise. The friend exercise, I think, actually is pretty neat. It's basically you find a close friend, not a relative, not your spouse, and you ask them, why do you consider me a good friend? And they're gonna look at you like, what? Because I like you, or something like, I don't know. And then you can ask them, what is it that makes me a unique friend? What is it about me versus your other friends that is unique, or something that draws you to me? And often when you have that conversation, their friend may have this aha moment to help you identify those special, unique qualities that you have to help you refine your why. I'd like to encourage you to refine your why statement so you can have clarity as you move forward on what your purpose is. So can we look at the mentee? Do we have the response, any responses up that we can see? Or are they not showing up? Okay. One of those things, I mentioned the friend test, the friend exercise, and then the other exercise that you did here, the impact people or experience exercise. You can do that with other people to help refine. But then there are other ways that you can help identify what are your motivations behind what you do. There are different types of, personality or psychological assessments that I've seen and done. One that I just recently discovered, and I thought it was so relevant to today's discussion, is the Enneagram. Has anybody heard of the Enneagram or have done an Enneagram assessment? The Enneagram is very different from like the Myers-Briggs or the Strengths Finder or some of these other assessments because it explains our core motivations which fuel how we move about the world, how we think, how we act, and how we feel. And the Enneagram is really about our why. It's a powerful way to start a personal development journey to understand what the key motivators are behind what you do. So this assessment gives you a core type. There are types from 1 to 9, and it tells what your the biggest aha from this assessment is the realization that there are really many ways to look at the world, and this assessment gives a layer deeper than some of the other assessments that look at how you act or what you do by going to the next level of why you do what you do. And once you understand that, you can understand more fully how and why you interact the way you do with the rest of the people in the world. So if you've never done an Enneagram assessment, I would recommend trying it out to understand why you go about the world. I took this assessment and I was like, dang, that is me. That's the truth. I understand now. That's why I do what I do. So now that we've discovered and talked about our individual why, how does that apply to the work that you do with VNPC? How does it apply to our work in trying to improve measurable outcomes in healthcare for moms and babies? And so, as I mentioned earlier, I really spent the bulk of my career in trying to build capacity for state collaboratives to be able to do this work of working collaboratively within states to work toward the same objectives of improving measurable outcomes for moms and babies. And along this journey, I realized the importance of being intentional, and I love this quote as well. Quality is never an accident. It is always the result of high intention, sincere effort, intelligent direction, and skillful execution. It represents the wise choice of many alternatives. What we see, the care that we provide, the outcomes that we see are that way because we designed it that way. And if we want it to change, we have to be very intentional about changing it. In the late 90s, there was this push to improve the care that is provided across our country. And the Institute of Medicine put new emphasis on quality improvement. And in this report known as Crossing the Quality Chasm, the Institute of Medicine charged the healthcare system with frequently lacking the environment, the processes, and the capabilities needed to ensure that services are safe, effective, patient-centered, timely, efficient, and equitable. And these qualities were called the 6 aims for improvement. In addition to achieving these aims, the Institute of Medicine recommended additional research, patient safety, and reducing medical error by establishing a national focus on the reporting of errors, raising safety standards by involving oversight and professional societies, and creating safety systems inside healthcare organizations. So this was sort of the beginning of the movement to improve the quality of care. Also during that time, there was a renewed focus on improving perinatal care, improving the quality of care offered for moms and babies. And there are efforts of multiple organizations focusing attention on improving the care provided for moms and babies. And even with that renewed attention, there seemed to be an additional need for more focused regional efforts. While there were organizations working to do things, there was something about being able to work with hospitals, work with stakeholders within the same region that take on the responsibility of improving the outcomes of all the moms and babies in that region, being able to understand the context of where the hospitals and communities are operating in that region, and being able to collaborate with hospitals and with the community to improve outcomes, and have the ability to compare the performance of hospitals also within that region that are operating within a similar context. Dr. Jeff Gould, who is pictured here, described the members of a regional quality improvement initiative as a community of change. Regional collaboratives presented an amazing opportunity for cooperation, for collaboration, and collective efforts leading to population-level improvements, taking the collective whys of all of those working together to come to the same goals of improving outcomes of moms and babies. So thus were born the Perinatal Quality Collaborative. And as you all know, state collaboratives are networks of multidisciplinary teams. You have nurses, you have docs, you have various other stakeholders, public health professionals that are all working together to improve measurable outcomes. One of the best parts of this is an opportunity to advance evidence-informed practices. Even though we know what we're supposed to do, everybody is not doing it. Being able to address gaps in people not doing what they're supposed to do by working together, and also including patients and families and other stakeholders to give input to the process. The importance of this work is that it leads to spreading of best practices, reducing variation in care, making sure every patient gets the best care every time, and then optimizing resources to improve care and outcomes. So state collaboratives do this through 3 strategies. And I share this because I want us to remember not just why we do the work, but why these collaboratives exist and how they function. So the why, let me just go back. The why is basically to support hospitals and various stakeholders and states to work together so that they can make measurable improvements in maternal and infant health. And then the how and the what includes identification of processes of care that require improvement, and then using collaborative learning, like we're doing today, sharing experiences, knowledge, and information to help push improvements, using baseline and ongoing collection of data to provide feedback about whether your interventions are even working, and then providing and receiving quality improvement support using quality improvement methods to improve care and outcomes. And the ultimate goal of this which is our what, is to achieve sustainable change within a specific topic area, achieving a new level of safer, more effective care, and ultimately achieving improvements in population-level outcomes in maternal and infant health. So PQCs are powerful. We often, talk about, that we're not doing enough, and part of it is because we're not fully claiming the power that PQCs have. There have been state PQCs that have been able to have amazing results. But we need to remember what our why is, what our how and our what is. And some of the power that PQCs have is leadership. We talk about inspiring leadership. Being able to have leaders that bring others on board to help people have buy-in to whatever initiative or or project that you're working on, and being able to get people to want to join, to want to participate, to be committed and motivated to and make the improvements within your space and ultimately throughout the state. The other power is collaboration. It is so much better to work together. And this, I think, is the PQC magic. It's something about hospitals that are often competing, competing for patients, working together to collectively improve outcomes for moms and babies across the state. Having a community of trust and sharing, being able to share data, being able to share information is powerful. Including the patient and family voice, there are opportunities to do this work and including their experiences and how we can make it better for them. And then the ultimate power is action, not just doing education or webinars or seminars, not just, talking about the problem, but actively putting interventions in place in using the data to improve outcomes. The beautiful thing about PQCs also is that it's active on the ground measurable change. We have these organizations and have, leadership within a PQC, but it really comes down to the individual clinical centers to do the work and to implement the change. And it's the collective work of these individual centers that can be scaled up we see statewide improvements. It's beautiful to have hospital level leadership and ownership of the projects, knowing that what you're doing is something that you know is needed and you have full power and input to how the project will go. Synergy of multiple partners and stakeholders, people that you wouldn't normally work with, are working together toward the same objective. And then ultimately, PQCs really have the power, and this is the one that we haven't quite achieved yet, but I think we can collectively achieve, is the power to change the culture of care so that how we do things changes and why we do things changes. So since this work began, when I was at CDC, we started support for PQCs in 2011. That was the first funding opportunity with 3 states. At the beginning of that funding opportunity, there were about a dozen or so, or less than a dozen states that had networks that were starting to be built to do this quality improvement work statewide. This is the first map that we actually produced, and you can see there aren't many states that were doing this work. There were some states that were funded, the 3 in darkest blue. There were some states that actually called themselves having a PQC, those the next level of blue. And then the lightest, there were a few states that were trying to pull something together. But since that time, this is the current map. And as you can see, it includes your state of Virginia. We have more than half of states in the country that are funded by the federal government to do this work. And there are many more that aren't, there are some others that aren't funded, but all 50 states have a network within the state that are working to improve measurable outcomes for moms and babies. I present this so that you understand that the work that you do at your center, at your hospital, is part of such a larger work. Every piece that you add from where you are adds to this national movement of improving outcomes for moms and babies. I tend to start these talks with the statistics that Shannon went through, some of them, how abysmal it is. Our maternal mortality rates are going higher. Our infant mortality rates actually have been declining over the years, but huge disparities still exist. And we have these statistics that are grim. But I want us to be able to understand that we have the power to change them. And it starts with the work at your local level that collectively leads to change nationally. So I just want to share some few examples of successes. And these are just a few because there are many more. On the maternal side, in the state of Illinois, they were able to improve the timeliness of treatment for severe blood pressure. And it went from 41% timely treatment at baseline to 79% just in the first year of the project. By the end of that project, they were able to reduce severe maternal morbidity in that state by 40%. Also in northern New England, they did work around substance use disorder and were able to increase access for mothers with opioid use disorder to medication-assisted treatment from 11 to 36%. They increased breastfeeding counseling also during that period from 51 to 72%. And then in California, you all often hear about California, but they did an effort to reduce severe pregnancy complications from hemorrhage, and were able to decrease rates by 22% from 22.7% at baseline to 18% in a 14-month project. And that's just a few examples. There are examples from many other states as well. And these are some examples on the infant side. In North Carolina, where they were able to reduce central line-associated infections among newborns. In Ohio, improving the use of antenatal steroids. And in Massachusetts, where they were able to reduce hospital length of stay and reduce pharmacotherapy for infants with neonatal opioid withdrawal syndrome. There are also many opportunities for us to improve outcomes, but also to address issues around equity. It's one thing to have an improvement project and to see overall improvements in the whole state. But then in some instances, if you look and disaggregate the data, you may see that you see improvements overall, but then those that are most disproportionately impacted have either no change at all or worsening of outcomes, and this has been shown. So it's so important that as we do these improvement efforts, there's so many opportunities for state collaboratives to specifically focus their efforts on birth equity, and I was so happy to hear this morning that that was a priority for VNPC. But the opportunities include being committed and invested in improving birth equity, using an equity lens in your collection and stratification and analysis of data, addressing social determinants of health, promoting education and training around equity, engaging patients and families, and building community partnerships, which I also noted was a priority for VNPC, and centering patient and community narratives and providing respectful care. And again, we have the opportunity to shift the culture of care. So before I end, I just want to share a little, I don't want to say it's a riddle, it's kind of a puzzle. Does anybody know what this is? Don't shout out the answer if you do. How about now? Now? It's coming clearer, huh? How about now? So now you see this entire picture is in full focus. And prior to this, there were pixels. When you look at the pixels individually, it just looks like nothing. Each of these pixels represents each of you, each of us doing this work. You have your own individual purpose. But when you're by yourself, it's not as purposeful, but when you put the pixels together, you can get a masterpiece. So each color is important. Each pixel is important. Each of us has a role and a purpose, a skill, a talent, or perspective to give to this work. And working separately, we're just another pixel, but together we can create a masterpiece. So I don't know if you remember when I said earlier that your why gives clarity. It makes things clear. And it's so important to understand your motivations for being engaged in this work and the why behind the work that you do. As you consider how you'll continue to improve the health care and outcomes for moms and babies in Virginia, be sure to consider your individual why and how it fits into the big picture. Thank you so much. Do we have time for questions, or did you want questions? Okay. I would hope everything was straightforward and no one has questions. Yeah. So just to share, because we didn't do the bio, I just want to share, since I left CDC, part of the reason I had an ulterior motive for leaving. So starting that work was very challenging at CDC in an environment where we're very research-focused, data-heavy, and to convince people that there are these networks and states that can pull together and actually change care, change how we do care, and allowing states to be able to decide what is it within your state that is so important to improve, and not to dictate to states, you know, you need to improve this, you need to do that, and giving the freedom to be able to identify the problems within your state, but also the solutions to address it. Since that time, the support, as I mentioned, started with 3 states. And we continued to press. It went from 3 and then to 6 states. And then we continued to press and showed results, and it went from 6 to 13 states, plus a national network of PQC. So we have a national network that supports the work that you do, where all states are working together to share solutions, to be able to share support, and to help build capacity in states with newer collaboratives. But I realized, I'm like, that's not enough. We have only 13 states out of 50. So my journey went to the nonprofit sector, and after leaving CDC, I went to March of Dimes. And part of my time at March of Dimes was spent advocating for additional support for this work. During that time, their CDC received additional funding, which led to the current funding opportunity where now 27 states are being supported with funding for this work. But we're not going to stop there. We need every state to be funded to do this work. This is difficult work. It's labor intensive. It requires cooperation, which is often like herding cats. It requires people who don't traditionally work together to work together. It's not easy work, but it's worthwhile work. It's important work. And we've shown across the country where it's very effective. So now I'm no longer at March of Dimes. I'm now with the National Institute for Children's Health Quality. And part of that shift, I'm an obstetrician gynecologist, and people say, well, why are you at Children's Health and you're an OBGYN? And one of those reasons is that when we look at the health of mom and baby, they are inextricably linked. What happens to mom through her life course and during that pregnancy impacts baby. And what happens during that pregnancy impacts mom's health, and we cannot separate them. And that was one of the things that I really fought for at CDC, is to keep the perinatal focus with the obstetric and the neonatal side. And as you can see, that's still holding together so far. But I'm asking you to join me on that soapbox and recognizing that mom and baby are a dyad and can't be separated. And as we think about solutions for mom, we consider how it impacts baby and vice versa. As we think about solutions for improving birth equity, some of the drivers for the disparities that we're seeing for mom are the same drivers that we see for baby. The same things that cause higher maternal mortality are some of the same things that lead to infant mortality. So as we move forward, I just want to encourage you to remember that, and just to share a little bit about my trajectory. So I'm working with children and families, but taking it from the maternal lens and being able to share that input of what happens to mom and how it impacts children and the health of kids. So if there are no questions, I guess we can go ahead and break or move to the next session.
All right, we're going to go ahead and get started. I know some people are still drifting in and finding seats. That's fine. So I wanted to talk about the data and outcomes and moving the needle. Previously at the summits, we usually have different individuals speak, but we haven't ever really spoken to what data we have with the VNPC. And so I wanted to take this time for this summit to really highlight what we have, what we're collecting for data within the VNPC. But I also want, and I have a space in this presentation to highlight what we actually can collect or what you actually can have access to with the maternal health dashboard. So it's kind of one of those best kept secrets. We allude to it, but we haven't actually, in a forum like this, played with it. And so I thought that this would actually be of value for everybody in this room. So we'll come back to that, but I'm going to go ahead and get started here. Okay, so the purpose for this one is we're going to discuss what data is available to the VNPC. We're going to understand what data you all have to inform you of your work. And then we're going to look at some specific Virginia data in a new way through the dashboard. And then we're going to leave it open for some questions and really have some time to discuss it a little bit further. All right, so we talked about this earlier. I want to just level set it back. All righty. Okay, so many of you know that General Assembly just ended officially. It's still out there. It's not officially over yet. But when I was talking to some legislators about some of the work that we were proposing for the VNPC, both with the VNPC to codify, but also the maternal health hubs and some other bills that were up, there was a lot of questions around where the VNPC starts and stops and where maternal mortality review team starts and stops. And as I mentioned earlier, the maternal mortality review team is actually the data aspect, and the VNPC is the implementation arm. So I do want to just put it out here because there was several individuals, and I feel like I talk about this all the time, but it seems like every time I bring this up, there's still someone that doesn't know or is not aware of the maternal mortality review team. So I want to actually put that out there in this space. And for those of you that were unaware, there is reports all the way back from 2000. So maternal mortality review team has been around almost 24 years. I'm looking over here at Melanie. So it's been around. And previously we've done triannual reports, but with this recent legislation and the reach of the GA, things have now been moved to annual. So moving forward, there will be an annual report published. So for everybody, this is the easiest way I get to it. Google Virginia Maternal Mortality Review Team, OCME. You will come up on the homepage and then click on reports. That will become your best friend moving forward when it talks about this. So the reports are actually broken down in, there's an executive summary, there's key details around that topic of that report. The most recent one, was published in 2019, specifically related to chronic diseases. So if you go and look at, so it'll have the executive summary discussions, and then we'll break it down. It breaks it down by location or region. It breaks it down by contributors to the death that the maternal mortality review team identified on review. And then if you go all the way to the back, it says recommendations. That's what a lot of people don't know. So previously, Melanie, we've got 13 reports out there, 12 reports out there? So we have all those recommendations. First of all, how many in this room knew there was recommendations in the maternal mortality review reports? Okay, 15, not bad, give or take. Okay, so looking at those recommendations, how many that knew they existed, how many of those recommendations have been implemented? Okay, that's exactly what I was thinking. So as I mentioned earlier, we have the CDC Maternal Mortality Review Team grant in partnership with Maternal Mortality Review Team. The VNPC currently right now is going back and looking at all recommendations all the way back to 2000 in all the reports, and we're looking at what recommendations have been implemented, what recommendations have not, what have been the successes of recommendations, and what has been the challenges. So recommendations are only as good as implementation. So if anybody's interested in more information on this, definitely reach out to me because this is an opportunity. But I do want to put that out there. And not just the VNPC has to do those implementations. Everybody in this room can see themselves with any of those recommendations. They're actually broken down by different categories. So you don't have to be a part of the VNPC to do any of those implementations at a local level. And as I mentioned, the last one was published in 2019. And I want to really highlight this last quote. 56% of all pregnancy-associated deaths in Virginia are preventable. All right, so I highlighted this earlier about the infant mortality, and as Dr. Henderson actually talked about as well, so we're continuing to decrease, but the disparity ratio is getting larger and larger. So what are we doing about that in Virginia? How many in here? Who thinks we have a femur team? Who knows what a femur team is? Okay, it's fetal infant mortality review. Does Virginia have one? We had one. It was disbanded in 2012. Previously, we had one, and it was what some of you may know as RPCs, Regional Perinatal Councils, and we had one in each of the 5 regions of the state. However, it was solely funded by General Assembly, and it was disbanded in 2012. So what have we done for the last 11 years related to infant mortality deaths? Well, they're not being investigated, and that's what FEMR did. They did family interviews, neighbor interviews, and then we could really get to some of the root causes of why. But we have not had it in 11 years. So right now, the way it's written is that it actually falls under child fatality review team, but they don't do the full investigation. So we don't get to have those interviews. We don't get to really understand our social determinants of health, which we know a lot of it is a direct impact of as far as infant mortality. We don't know which regions we have higher cases because of X or Y, because it's not happening. They are being reviewed from a surveillance perspective under child fatality, and they are being reported, but that's about where it stops. So I'm challenging everybody in this room to educate yourself more about femurs, and we're going to be getting some groups together through the VNPC, but we can't do it alone. We need other voices out there to really highlight the importance of what femur does from a data perspective. I will say when we go for funding with this, it's a challenge because a lot of times funders want to see immediate results. You do not get immediate results with femur. You will get results in about 3 to 5 years. And so that's a hard sell, considering how time-consuming interviews can be, how detailed the femur actually is. So I just want to throw that out there as a challenge. And again, that's another discussion that often comes up is, what are we doing about it? Right now, not a whole lot. We know it's happening, but I couldn't tell you where the majority of our safe sleep deaths are. I can't tell you what the causes of it is within Virginia because we don't have that granular data. There is a report out there that was published in 2014 from Virginia. That's the last report that was done as it relates to infant mortality, and there was a focus on safe sleep. But that's about 9 years ago. And the data was actually previous to that. It was published in 2014, but the data was probably stopped at 2010, 11, if I had to guess. So that's over 13, 14 years worth of data that's missing. All right, so I want to talk about a little bit more about what our actual quality improvement projects are. I know we have a great representation from hospitals here. And so we have 3 projects, and then we'll jump into them a little bit more. So we have Project Embrace. Some of you may be familiar with this from Project. It was previously known as the 4th Trimester Project. We were asked to change our name nicely. So we changed our name to Project Embrace, which is equitable care for mothers and infants, readiness, access, and community engagement. And then I'm going to come back to the other ones here in a second. So I'm going to leave this here for a second. We have 17 hospitals currently participating in Project Embrace. I know some people are taking pictures and observing which hospitals, so I'm going to hold here for a second. If you do not see your hospital on here, let's talk. Okay? We are actually opening our relaunch. We'll be open here after this summit. And we'll be onboarding new hospitals starting in middle of April-ish. Okay, so what is our project? We've actually had this project out in the space for over a year. We did a soft launch, we did a pilot, and we've attacked this topic differently than what other states have done as far as quality improvement. And we recognized in meeting with our subject matter experts that we couldn't just address the 4th trimester or postpartum care immediately postpartum. It was a process. So we have broken it down into 6 phases. Our first phase, we really work with our 1st and 2nd trimester. And as it says here, our goals: screening, risk assessment, awareness to changes, and then discuss cultural relevant aspects of patient care. And then we have phase 2, which is late prenatal care, 3rd trimester to admission to hospital, or admission. It doesn't necessarily do admission because I know we recognize home births. We have birthing centers, so use that sparingly. We just put admission there as kind of a holding spot. And then phase 3 is delivery, regardless of the outcome. And again, admission to discharge. So if you're having a home birth, so from the time the midwife gets to the home to the time that midwife leaves. So again, fill that in loosely. We have phase 4, which is a change. This is in alignment with ACOG guidance from 2018 of discharge to 3 weeks postpartum. And then we have phase 5, which is 4 weeks to 6 months postpartum, which is where over half of our maternal mortality deaths occur that are preventable. And then we have phase 6. We added this on with the expansion of Medicaid, which covers a woman and their infant to 364 days postpartum. So that is really, and this aligns with ACOG's guidance, again, from 2018 in the committee opinion poll. As it relates to, it's a discussion with a patient and their provider on when you go from OB care or postpartum care back to that well woman's exam. So what you don't see up here is that we've actually broken this down into 5 topics. We have perinatal mental health, maternal health, breastfeeding, reproductive health, and prevention care and counseling. So initially when we rolled this project out, we opened it up to hospitals to either implement by topic or by phase. After a year of attempting to implement and then meeting with all the hospitals who did try to pilot and implement one-on-one, it was decided that it was too complicated to implement 5 topics in one phase versus 1 topic across 6 phases. So as hospitals onboard into this project, you will pick your topic. I will say that the majority of hospitals right now are picking perinatal mental health. And you will walk across all 6 phases of implementation. So there will be objectives, and then activities and metrics for all 6 phases. Why is this important? Because this is where that coordination of care, which we recognize, going back to that maternal mortality review team report, we recognize that the lack of or the inefficiency of coordinated care played a role in the majority of our preventable maternal mortality deaths. So how do you transfer a patient from the community setting to the hospital, back to the community setting with all the resources that they need in that early postpartum, and then continue on in that continuum of care all the way till they transition back? We haven't figured it out. But hopefully with this project, as hospitals work with their communities, which is a requirement for all hospitals to have members of their community or nonprofit organizations, health departments, home visiting. The options are endless on your actual committee teams as you decide to implement this. We cannot do this in a silo. We cannot just rely on hospitals implementing. You have to partner with your community providers. You have to partner with your community organizations to make this coordination of care seamless. It's not easy work, but hopefully we have resources available for you all, and we will all work through it together. All right, so I want to jump into the maternal health dashboard. So for all hospitals that sign on as a commitment, they're going to implement the quality improvement projects, they will have access to the maternal health dashboard. This data contains all payers' claim data and hospital discharge data. This is a phenomenal resource, but there are limitations and barriers. The main limitation and barrier right now is the fact that it captures a patient's data at one point in time, at that discharge, after a delivery has occurred. So if a mom presents at 24 weeks in preterm labor and is admitted to the hospital for 2 weeks on bed rest and observation, and then is discharged at 27 weeks with no delivery that results, this data will not be captured in the maternal health dashboard. So why is this important? Because this is one of the things we look at maternal mortality review team is how many times did this patient come into a system of care or a provider to where we could have altered those outcomes. So this is a limitation of the maternal health dashboard, but there's still a lot of other benefits of it. So I do want to just preface that as you're looking at this data, This is the data that is of all deliveries as it occurred in Virginia where delivery occurred. And we're going to play with the dashboard here in a second. So this is what it is. We can filter. You guys can't really see these little filters, but you can actually filter by hospital name, year, quarter. We have a COVID flag on there. So either they had a positive diagnosis of COVID at the time of delivery or they did not. We can filter by age, length of stay, number of chronic conditions, a psychosocial flag. So we'll look at that data here in a second, but it's any ICD-10 code as it relates to mental health. And then we can filter by zip codes, payer source, and then we've broken down that even further. So type of payer, where this is important because we do have a significant veteran population and military population, so we can actually filter it by that. Race, chronic conditions, DRG, which is your cesarean or vaginal delivery, your descriptions, a stillbirth flag, so we do have a stillbirth flag, yes or no. And then specifically, if you want to look at just specific ICD-10 codes, you can do that. And then we just added this in within the last 30 days, the severe maternal morbidity code, which is all ICD-10 codes as AIM has identified. And I can share those with anybody if they want to know. It's like roughly 5 pages worth of codes, but we put that in there as a severe maternal morbidity flag. So you can either say yes or no. You won't know specifically what the morbidity was, but you will know that it was one of those morbidity codes. So, and then at the bottom, you can actually see the total discharges of whatever you filtered. You'll be able to see by year if you want, and then you can see by quarters. The darker the color, the higher the incident. And then you have your length of stay down at the bottom. There's also heat maps where you can see and look at it across the state. So I just did a quick filter this morning just to start the conversation, but I wanted to highlight, this is the maternal morbidity in Virginia as of this morning. Look at the length of stay. That's how many days the patient remained in the hospital. An uncomplicated vaginal delivery is roughly 36 to 48 hours. A section is roughly 36 to 48 hours. But we're in 11 days in 2020. And for the first 3 quarters of data in 2022, 8.2. I'm going to pause here real quick before I go to the next slide. What we want this dashboard to inform you as you start to filter by regions, communities, zip codes, hospitals, is to identify where your low-hanging fruits is in your area of opportunity to focus your quality improvement projects around. So this should be, when you pull this data out of this dashboard, it's not going to give you answers. If anything, you should be asking more questions. Why does this data look like this? What are we doing that's not working? What are we doing that is working? And again, I left this at the state level. But when you start to drill down to zip code or hospital level, it'll look a lot different. When you start to add in payer source, when you start to filter by race, ethnicity, when you start to filter by cesarean versus vaginal, it really changes this data. So mental health. Like I mentioned, this is what a lot of our hospitals right now with the reset are selecting, and there's a reason for that. As I mentioned, the darker the color, the higher the incidence from the compared average across other quarters. It seems like as we go from 2017 to 2022, it's getting darker, which means more individuals. Now, this is a diagnosis at the time of delivery. So this is not counting your postpartum depression, postpartum psychosis, anything that's delivered after the discharge of the hospital. All right, so I'm going to pull up the dashboard and I'm going to open it up to the audience and we're going to just play around with the dashboard and see what happens. Again, I'm going to open this up. You guys can shout out any filter. I will say it takes a little bit of time. We got time. It takes a little bit of time for it to adjust the more filters I put in place. But let's just play around and see what happens with the data. I think this is the best way to get comfortable with this dashboard, and I realize that hospitals have access to this if they're participating, but sometimes it's a new thing, and so it seems a little bit intimidating, and so that's why I want to take the opportunity to really highlight what different information. Now, I did not plant any responses in the crowd, so I have no idea what this data is going to show. So, and we'll collectively throw something together. So let me have Jermaine change over to the PowerPoint, and it looks like I'm already up. Okay, so I am not, for the sake of this, going to filter by hospital, okay? Because I'm not trying to pull anybody out. Now we can, for zip codes, if you guys want to throw zip codes out there, we can do that, but I'm not going to do hospital names, okay? This is not punitive. This shouldn't be anything. If anything, like I said, this should be asking why and how can we improve this data. So this should be informing your work plans. All right, I'm going to also leave I'm going to leave quarter. What I want to play around with is primary payer, race, chronic conditions, delivery type. So somebody go ahead and throw something out, or we can throw zip codes. But if we're going to do zip codes, I want to do like 10 or 5, because again, I don't want to call anybody out. All right, so let's go with zip codes. Is there any specific zip codes anybody wants to pull out? 23226. Okay. Actually, hang on. Let me go back. Let me uncheck everything. Let me take the all off. Sorry, this is. Jermaine, this is super sensitive. Okay. All right, there we go. Okay. Sorry, 23226. Okay, we're going to check that. Okay, another zip code. 23702. Okay. 23112. Oh, you guys are using all like local ones. That's fine. Yes. Okay. 2801. Okay, let's take one more. Okay. Like I said, it does every time you do something, it takes a little bit of time. Okay, you said 23462. Okay. All right. Somebody throw out. Let me let this do what it wants to do. Okay. So here's all of our pair sources. Throw like 3 out there. So the benefit with this, or not, is we actually went to the HMO. So I need which MCO? Which one? Optimum? Okay, so United, Optimum, and Anthem. The only thing about this dashboard is you've got to have patience. Okay, and then let's look at, we're going to look at white first, and then we're going to look at black. Did Anthem not click? Thanks, Mary. Well, do we really want to filter any lower because our numbers are all pretty small? Let's leave it at that. So we're going to look at private and Medicaid. And let's do, so white, and then, okay, so here's a good one. So everybody sees this. We're looking at white with those zip codes, those payer sources, and then let's look at section rates. All right, let's do everything the same. So everybody look at this slide, and all I'm going to do is change race. All right. Does anybody, this was a surprise. So we went from dark to light, 3.3 days length of stay. 2019, there was an outlier, 5.5. But then when I went back to white, we were at 4.4 days. So why do we have the difference? What's up here? Oh, I gotta reconnect. So this one's actually interesting, and I'll go ahead and throw some hypothesis out there, is the fact that for this one, and again, I've never seen this data set, so this is what I would be asking, just knowing state level data, is, and I did do it by section, and I don't know, we just randomly threw out zip codes, so we didn't throw in a mental health flag. So is it mental health and we don't have the resources available for them to be referred to right after or to be transferred to? Another one is we could have more insured white under that. So this, you're right, the N is smaller. But if you look at 2021 with this data, we're at 2.8 days of stay versus 4.4. Now I'll give you guys we can actually scroll down a little bit more, and we can actually look at what the top causes are: anemia, obesity, anxiety, hyperthyroid, depression, depressive, and asthma. So these were pretty small groups, but what I actually did is something similar to this, and I did something similar to this with all the Centera data as a whole. And what was very interesting was each locality, and Centera pretty much has representation across the entire state. What was very interesting was the difference across the state. So we talk about race and whether it being a systemic issue or not. Related to Centera, it was not health system level. It was locality level. There was discrepancies within data. One thing I thought was very interesting for Centera data as a whole is Northern Virginia had a very high rate of STIs among Centera hospitals across the entire state. So what does this tell us? If we have patients in Northern Virginia at Centera, we should probably provide STI education at discharge. So this is where this data should inform some of your work plans and inform some of your activities as far as what you do. This is a rabbit hole. You can definitely sit here for hours and start, adding different filters in, taking filters out, and doing that. So I encourage you, if you guys do not have access to this yet, or you're not part of our quality improvement project, this license is paid for by the VNPC for as long as you are actively enrolled in a quality improvement project. For short, that's $1,500 a year to have access to this for one license that the VNPC will cover. So can we switch back to the PowerPoint, please? So we have these resources available that we highly would like you guys to utilize. All right, so let's jump over to different topics. So locate. Does anybody in here know what locate is? Jane, I know you know. Lori, I know you know. And I know you know because you're going to speak on it. Okay, so for those of you that did not raise your hand because you're already subject matter experts, locate is levels of care. It is, we're working with CDC to where it's a survey, it's not a survey, it's an assessment that we provide for hospitals to do both from the maternal level and from the NICU or infant level. And you go through and answer these questions on whether your hospital has or doesn't have. And then we take that, I de-identify it, and then I submit it to CDC. They have no idea whose hospital is which. I was the only one that knew for Virginia which hospitals were which. And then we actually take that, and then they check it with ACOG and AAP guidelines as it relates to levels of care. There's 4 levels. Level 1, 2, 3, and 4. 4 being the most, what's the word? Thank you. Complex, the most resources, the most ability to take care of the sickest patient. Same thing. So you can have a hospital assessed at a level 2 for maternal and level 4 for neonatology or for infant. They're both, they're not together, they're separate. So we had 16 hospitals that submitted that assessment. Of the 16 hospitals that submitted, based on the responses they provided, only 2 of them assessed at what they predicted their own assessment to be. So we asked at the very end of the survey, what is your self-assessment of your institute based on the answers you provide? Only 2. Now, in review, some of the information they provided, they did not ask the right person, so somebody guessed, and so that's fine. The survey's open again, and they're redoing it. But what it was is it was a pause that they could actually say, hey, or there was legitimately hospitals that thought they were self-assessed at level 3 were actually level 2. And so it provided, and I provided feedback back through CDC to actually understand what they need to do to get at each of these levels. So why is this important? Because we know that if a mom delivers at the right level of care to where she needs, based on the care, then her outcomes more likely than not are to be improved. Same with a baby. For many of us, for years, going back to what Dr. Henderson said, and that dyad, is that we've tried to deliver babies at the optimal level of care, which might be a level 4, but their maternal level of care is assessed at 2. And so then we don't have the adequate resources, staff, subject matter expertise, fill in the blank, of what mom needs. So we want to ensure that mom is delivering at the right level of care that she needs. So there's that opportunity. And once hospitals self-assessed, get their feedback back, we can either work with them to get to the level that they want to be at or where they think they are. And then also, we're putting together a work group to actually ensure that a level 1 knows who is their level 2, 3, and 4 to refer or to transfer patients to ensure that they know where the right level of care is and what sets apart level 1 and level 2, 3, 4. The other thing is that we know in Virginia, and I have the data, I have not had time to look at it, but we know in Virginia that there is maternal health deserts. We all know that. Same with infant health deserts. But if we have a patient presenting, we have entire districts or entire counties that do not have a birth hospital. We only have 51 birth hospitals in Virginia. So if we have a person that presents to a non-birth hospital to deliver, is that staff know what to do with the delivery? So we're looking at this, so we call those level 0 hospitals because they don't have a birth hospital. So we're in the process of looking at that to see how many deliveries occur in our non-birth hospitals across Virginia and starting to provide some basic education and training for those providers to ensure that they are, and we have several hospitals that are delivering like 25 and 30 babies in a non-birth hospital at their hospital. And so that's part of this process. So we have the survey open. We'll provide the links if it's not in the link tree, and I don't remember if it is. But if you have a hospital that has not done the locate model, we encourage you. We would love to work with you to actually submit that assessment. It is not a survey. It's not, nobody's going to get any, you're not paying for anything. It's literally an assessment just to make sure that you understand what it is. Now, you can pay for different ones, or you can utilize this as that. We have a couple of hospitals that utilize this to see where they were at so that they could then prepare for the different certifications that are out there. So if you have not submitted that and you would like to submit it, please let me know. Shoot me an email, or we will definitely put out the link. It's open. You can submit, and then once results come back, you'll have 30 days. Let's say something comes out and you talk to the wrong person, they didn't put the right information, we can definitely redo it. And again, it's just an assessment. All right, so the next one that I talked about, our next project, which we are in the subject matter expert work group development right now, so we're actually developing the project. We are looking for a couple more to join this team, and it is eliminating bias in the dyad care. So many of you that have been around with the VNPC knows that we have attempted to do a quality improvement as it relates to substance use among pregnant and parenting women, and we've also done neonatal abstinence syndrome. Yet our numbers still continue to rise because we've not yet addressed it from a dyad approach in Virginia. So that's what this eliminating bias in dyad care project is we are going to actually work as a dyad to address substance use in the pregnant parenting population, both from the mom and from the baby side. So we have a co-chair. We have Dr. Arthur Ohlendorf as OB, ex-waivered addiction management, hopefully October, right? Boarded, hopefully in October, as the OB. And then we also have a hospitalist pediatrician as our co-chair. So we are even starting from our co-chairs up, we have both OB and peds at the table working together to address this with the work plan. So we are developing the work plan right now, the objectives, the project. We have the infrastructure already out there. So if you would like to get involved, again, more opportunity. But we hope to be rolling this out as a pilot to hospitals late summer, early fall. We will pilot it for a year, and then we will do one-on-one talks and then come back, and then we will roll it out to the whole state for implementation. This one is going to be very, very, very heavily focused with communities, hospitals, but then that transfer of those resources within communities. All right, so you guys are going to hear more about this, so just kind of realize this does come with the data, and I don't want to jump too much into this because we will do this after the break, but we have done something. We started a new project with the VNPC, and we are actually taking that data and we're doing digital storytelling. So a little bit of we've done one session. Again, we'll have more about this, but we're going to roll out our second workshop. So here's dates. We'll have this slide up there again, but it does add into our data is we're actually putting the why behind that data and what it actually looks like. All right, I think the only thing I did not mention, and it's up here, another resource that we have for all hospitals that are jumping on board is Life QI, which is actually focused on all of your metrics will be in Life QI. You will be able to do reports. You'll be able to run reports. Again, we will pay for all licenses for hospitals. We'll pay for 2 per hospital for the Life QI, which is really your QI-specific data with the metrics to do input. Data will be collected on a monthly basis, and then we will run reports quarterly, and you will be able to access all of your data. We on the back end, and then you'll be able to see where you're at with other hospitals as it relates to that, but it'll be de-identified. So it'll be like hospital A, and you'll be at like whatever place you are along the line. So that is also available. So we have a lot of resources for hospitals, data-wise, for those that are wanting to jump on for our quality improvement projects. All right, I am going to open it up for questions. We're right, I believe, I don't have an agenda up here. Okay. I'm going to open it up for questions. I know there's got to be questions. There's always questions with data.
What about access to that for non-hospitals, like through the health department?
Right. Mary, do you want to answer this? So we do the maternal health dashboard in partnership with VHHA. So I'm going to let Mary with VHHA answer this. I could, but she'll give you the better answer.
I'm also loud, so I don't know. I may not need this. So the data use agreements that we have in place with our hospitals and healthcare systems do not permit sharing of hospital-specific data with any entity outside of that hospital, because this is pre-adjudicated claims data. So that means this is data that hasn't actually even been paid by the payers. It's just claims that are attached to the discharge. And there could be a lot of confusion that resulted if it went outside of that sphere. You are able to get aggregated data, as Shannon presented today, through the VNPC, and I believe you can make requests to Shannon for that.
Yeah,
if
you can
need
make
that.
requests through me. We have a lot of students. Ariana down here has actually been doing a wealth of data pulls from that data. And like I mentioned, I covered up hospitals. So that would be the only thing that we would do. We could do it by zip code, but I will actually black out the hospitals for that. Or if the data is too small, I won't be able to give it back to you. Again, protection of the hospitals for this. But yes, if anybody has in the community that doesn't have access to this through the hospital. So first I would encourage you to reach and work with your hospitals. This is why we're trying to really foster these relationships. However, I also understand that I don't want to prevent you from being able to progress or to look at specific things within your locality. So yeah, just shoot me an email or use the Virginia, the generic email, the Virginia NPC at gmail.com, and we will work on that request for you. And then if you can just, and we can do it by location if you want specifically, we'll work together with the specificity or what exactly you're looking for that data. Any other questions?
If we're interested and kind of wanting to explore like how we could be involved or what that would look like for our connection, what will we need to do for that?
Yeah, so first thing is reach out. We do this all the time. We actually will sit down and we'll schedule a meeting. We'll do a one-on-one call. It'll be Brittany and myself. And really, I want to just give you that opportunity to either ask to see if this is a good fit, to see if there's somebody within your community that's doing it. So really just reach out to us, and then we will schedule a one-on-one, and it can be 30 minutes, an hour, whatever time you want, and then we'll actually spend that time answering all your specific questions and proposing next steps and where we go from there. And I'm sorry, I said Gmail. We changed it over to @vcuhealth.org for our generic email. So I check this email. Well, I want to say every day, but Sabrina has to remind me sometimes to check it every day. Full transparency. Any other questions?
Hospital. The locate is specifically for hospitals, but as a health department that might provide prenatal care, but we don't do the deliveries, is there a way to get that, to figure out where that number lied after?
The goal is for us to have all 51 hospitals that do this self-assessment for this locate. So once we start getting hospitals doing this, and once we get some more done, yeah, we can definitely, or I can work with that hospital to work with you. Ideally, what we want is to be able to put this out there and try to, identify pathways so that you know where your different levels are based on the diagnosis or acuity of that mom and or baby. So that, when you're in the moment and you need to know, okay, I got to transfer this baby to level whatever, you're not having to dig through information. It'll be readily available for that. So that is in process, and that's kind of the next steps of after we get assessment. It's not going to just stop there. It's going to be developing and working towards these pathways.
I was wondering about the level 0 areas, the hospitals that don't have birthing facilities. Are you involving EMS departments and like 911 dispatch in those conversations so that they can figure out like where to dispatch folks to when they get OB emergency calls?
Yeah, I think that would be the ideal. Like, that's end of the road. Like, we just did our first level of assessment December, January. So we're very new with this. But yes, ultimately, like, this is just starting that conversation and where we're going to go. So yes, EMS would be involved. 911, those things eventually. I need to first get everybody to self-assess. Once we've done that, then we can definitely expand this project out. So some of the other states that have done this before, that have done this model, and it's worked really well. Texas is the creme de la creme right now as far as doing these levels of care in that. Ideally, that's where we would love to get. But yes,
Yeah.
we're not there yet. But yes.
But there's some reaching out happening between like various levels of EMS coordination at the state, different regions with like the midwifery organization. And so I kind of want to triangulate.
Yes, we will definitely
bring them in the fold.
I got you. We will bring you in, Tana. Definitely. No, and this is, again, we're just starting this conversation. Part of today is that awareness and the outreach that, this is what we're doing and this is what we're working towards. And again, and I'm not going to, if we have some hospitals that it's just not the right time, they don't want to participate, it's not going to prevent everybody else and prevent us from moving forward. But ideally, yes. The other thing that we want to really reach out is to identify which hospitals are having more than a handful of deliveries on a regular basis based on data, and what they need. Because I guarantee it's going to be, their needs are going to be different based on where they're located within the state. So we're in the process of doing that too. So again, there's an interest form on the link tree. Go ahead and drop that in the comments if you're interested. In short, I think there's a lot of opportunity to get involved. I'm never going to say no. And if we have enough interest and this is something that needs to be moved kind of to the forefront, and we've got the volunteers and people and the SMEs at the table, absolutely. Let's maybe advance this faster than we thought if there's more interest than what we had thought. The sky's the limit. Any other questions? These have all been great. Leslie.
Fit into this?
Too late. So sorry.
I'm thinking.
Did you want to?
So the question was, how does other previous 5-star breastfeeding friendly hospitals fit into this? I may or may not be looking at Jen. Oh, related to the locate? No, that's not, because this is a CDC, and I can pull down the assessment. If anybody wants to actually see the assessment, please shoot me an email. I can provide you that assessment. A lot of the questions as it relates to these assessments is, do you have a cardiologist on staff at all time or on call? Are they on the? So it's more, what do the hospitals have as it relates to care for? Infrastructure and people, not necessarily programs or service lines. Yeah, so we could, but I do think, this is a discussion we can have as we start to identify that, and maybe that would be area of opportunity of looking at what is assessed at a level 3 or 4. Do they have, or are they participating in the quality improvement project for Project Embrace? We can start to map and overlay all of this and start to paint the bigger picture. All right, I think we got time for one more question.
How is data collected on how organizations use the license for the maternal health dashboard, and what changes can we expect in the next few years?
Yeah, so as far as the maternal health dashboard, honestly, if you want to change to this, so we make changes. I work with VHHA very regularly, and so for example, the maternal morbidity flag or that identifier was just added in. I think it was a lot of data to pull in on the back end. So that one took a little bit of time for them to actually do, but I feel like every time we have a summit or a big meeting, it's are you able to do this? Are you able to do that? And then I go back to VHHA and say, hey, can we add this to the dashboard? Can we add that? So stillbirth has been added, COVID flag, maternal mortality, or morbidity. I wanted to add in, because we're working with the VA hospital, TRICARE. And so we can make those changes if I feel like it's going to be a bigger benefit for the whole program. Number one. And then your second question is on the back end. So they can actually pull, VHHA can pull on the back end which hospitals are assessing and utilizing that license, and what are they utilizing it, kind of what are they pulling in that information. I will say, full transparency, we're just getting our hospitals up and comfortable with utilizing this. So it's still, I would say, even though it's been out there for almost 2 years, it's still in the very much crawling phase. So as we move forward with projects, onboarding will be, you will have your license, and we will actually walk you through how to utilize this license. So I think that that's been some of the barriers, is that individuals aren't comfortable or are not aware how to utilize it, and so they haven't been using it. So that's been a lesson learned on our part. So we've actually implemented this into, as you roll out these QI projects, you will be taught how to utilize this prior to launching. Did that answer your questions?
Thank you.
Okay. All right. So I will be available if you have any more questions. You can stop me during a break, during lunch, but I want to go ahead, and we are moving into breakout sessions. There's 3, and Chuma, can I see your? All right, so we have levels of care for the NICU. It's going to be in the Chesapeake Ballroom, which is right here. We have maternal mortality review team, which is going to be in the Blue Ridge, which is straight down Blue Ridge A and B. And Melanie will be doing that presentation. And then Maternal Quality Care Alliance will be presented by Stephanie Spencer, and that will be in Blue Ridge Ballroom D and E. So we will be there for about an hour, and then after that will be lunch, and then we'll be back in here at 1 o'clock. So if you guys want to go ahead and move to your breakout, and I will see everybody back in here at 1 o'clock.